you cannot escape the fact that, filmmaking, and especially the kind of filmmaking here, is essentially an elitist endeavor. And here we're sitting talking about democracy. For people, democratically, we would probably not be here.
In the context of the audiovisual European field, actually in our industry, that is a bit threatened at the moment. That's why also I think that this kind of panel is very important, is that the ability for all of us and all European countries and the rest of the world, of course, to be able to tell our stories. Mm-hmm. And us as producers to still be able actually to champion those directors and to protect their freedom of speech and their ability to tell those very specific stories that are more than just film and our economy, but also the vision of our world, our society that is changing. And it's very important. I think that Cannes is the festival where those films are being in the spotlight and then really, can change our vision of the world. But we, as producers, without the politics, we can't do anything.
But do you feel that you're still able to make these films? Are they being challenged? You both kind of alluded to the fact, of the certain more right-wing governments emerging in Europe, and I know you can speak about, Green Border, for example. We know this happens in Iran, the seed of the sacred fig, and we can get into that. The story of the making of the film is so incredible. But, we heard about it, and we're not surprised. Iranian filmmakers have faced challenges, but we're seeing this perhaps. I don't know if you want to speak to what happened with The Apprentice and in the US and in terms of making the film, finding a distributor, and also programming it and behind the scenes and what went on there. Was it a tough film to finance and distribute?
Yeah, but I want to just go a little bit back because, I can't, I love to be here. I love you guys. There's a lot of love, but you cannot escape the fact that, filmmaking, and especially the kind of filmmaking here, is essentially an elitist endeavor. And here we're sitting talking about democracy. For people, democratically, we would probably not be here. If the French people would have a say, they would probably want to see those comedies with all those close-ups on wine and cheese and, if the Danes, would have to say, they would just keep doing their, Second World War, hero movies. You know what I mean? That is democracy, actually. And the fact that as someone who invested a lot of time in sort of useless knowledge of getting to know Donald Trump personally, his win was a democratic win. And I think you have to sort of come to terms with that because, you can't just love democracy when it works for us and our values, and you have to acknowledge that, sometimes, because the whole, at least in Europe, the whole sort of cultural framework after the Second World War was not built on democracy. It was built on let's make sure we don't burn people again, in concentration camps. So let's educate people. It was a really elitistic project from top down. So there is that conflict in at the core of what we're talking about.
I think the fear is that the people in power within, you mentioned, going back to World War II, and even we're seeing this now in America, and you brought it up too, the media and controlling the press and controlling culture. I think that is what is perhaps being challenged. I don't know, maybe you want to speak about what's happening within the Nordic countries and your country in terms of, is there a separation of church and state? Because, in America, this is the first time there's even a thought about how a government might be able to influence what people are seeing in the movies and things like that. Can you speak?
That's not true. That's not true. We've had all sorts of things going back to 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s.
Recently,
yeah. Yeah, but,
I would follow Ali on the fact that the American soft power was not a neutral approach to audiovisual films and works in general. So I think the notion of artistic freedom and how it articulates to what we would like to consider well-functioning liberal democracies is maybe what this is about, really, more than democracy itself, because, of course, democratic elections may lead to illiberal regimes to be set into motion. So the question is really like, what is the right environment for artistic freedom to thrive, and what is it that we all need, both in the market and in the political context, for that to happen, for filmmakers to be able to lift off storytelling that can be both pleasing and challenging to the audiences out there. I guess that's what's at stake, maybe.